novel that has been called an instant classic of 21st century Catholic fiction. That's right. Today on The Simple Truth, I'm Jim Havens. We do consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Our guest today is Dr. Daniel McInerny. He is associate professor and chair of the philosophy department at Christendom College. As a scholar, he is foremost interested in reactivated and Aristotelian understanding of art as imitation. We talked about his book last week, Beauty and Imitation, a philosophical reflection on the arts. You can find that over at bookstore.wordonfire.org. He's also a novelist and dramatist. And last year, his novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair, was published by Chrism Press, chrismpress.com. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're very blessed to have him back here with us. So if you missed the last episode, that was last Monday, you can go back and find that. But glad to have you here with us today. Dr. Daniel McInerny, welcome back to The Simple Truth. How are you doing today?
Jim, I'm fantastic. It's great to be with you again. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Great blessing to have you with us. So yeah, I was thinking about it. I don't know that I have interviewed any authors about a novel that they have written. So this is a treat to do so today. And certainly one of the lines we want to walk here is we want to avoid spoilers. We want to encourage people to be able to enjoy this novel on their own, but we want to give enough today to whet the appetite. Also, as we get into this wonderful novel, especially want to spend some time talking about the process of writing it with the author, Dr. McInerny. But first, Doctor, can you share a little bit of a summary of your own story with us as we begin today? What are the most important points of your own life, in your view, that lead you to be here with us talking about your terrific novel today?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm a native of South Bend, Indiana. I am the last of 7 children of Ralph and Connie McInerny. My father, Ralph McInerny, who was a renowned novelist and Thomistic philosopher, taught at the University of Notre Dame for over 50 years. So I and my siblings grew up in South Bend. I received my undergraduate degree in English from the University of Notre Dame. I think I might have been saying last week, I always think of myself as an artist before a philosopher. I was a late vocation to philosophy, falling in love with it very late in my undergraduate years. But then I went on to graduate studies in philosophy. I received my doctoral degree from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. I've had an academic and teaching career in the intervening decades. I now teach in the philosophy department at Christendom College in Front Royal, Virginia. Also chair that department currently. My wife, Amy, and I have 3 grown children and 1 adorable grandchild, and we live in beautiful Fauquier County in North Central Virginia. So I've always been a writer. I've combined it with philosophical work. But as I say, I've always thought of myself as an artist first, and I couldn't be more pleased that my novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair, appeared here from Chrism Press.
Excellent. Yeah, again, folks can get it over at chrismpress.com, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. And what are your own favorite books or greatest literary influences? And do we find traces of these influences in your novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair?
Yeah, I would say I mentioned one in particular. I think, for my money, the greatest Catholic novelist of the 20th century was the British novelist Evelyn Waugh. I've always been taken by his satire and by his critique, really, of what was increasingly becoming an anti-culture in the 20th century. Many of your listeners will surely have heard of his novel Brideshead Revisited. That was certainly a huge influence upon me in writing The Good Death of Kate Montclair, but also his earlier kind of blackly comic, very satiric novels, have always captivated my imagination and are always influencing my writing to one degree or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, terrific. Thank you for that. And when did the idea for this story, The Good Death of Kate Montclair, when did this first begin to stir in you? And what was it that resonated strongly with you when it was merely in its seed form?
Yeah, I remember very vividly the occasion in which I thought I at least had a setting for a novel. I was actually doing some work at a Panera restaurant in Northern Virginia. And you may know, if you've ever been in a Panera, that when you go back to the restrooms, they usually have a bulletin board on the wall where businesses put their cards. And there was an advertisement on this bulletin board, pretty much exactly as I describe it in the relevant scene in the book. There were skeletons, as you may have seen, kind of lying head to toe, making up the border of the advertisement. And it was an advertisement for something called the Death Cafe. And this is a thing. You can Google it and you can find stories about the Death Cafe from the New York Times, USA Today, and other outlets. And that was something that I thought would make a fascinating setting for the novel. What the Death Cafe basically is, it's something like a public book club. Though they don't read books, they get together at a coffee shop, interestingly, over tea and cake, which I was captivated by that as sort of a pseudo sacramental image. And this group of strangers talks about death. Because whether they admit it to themselves or not, they find themselves in a culture that, again, is anti-culture, that doesn't give them the practices, the rituals, the beliefs that ultimately help them to make sense out of the most important question in life. How do we die? How do we make sense of the fact that our life is going to end? And so folks get together in these coffee shops and they simply talk about, their funeral, what to do with their pets when they die, what to do with their music collection how to talk about it with friends and family members. It's kind of a way of patching together a culture that well, maybe it's too much to say no longer exists in our culture, but is in great danger in our culture. So I came upon this advertisement in Panera and I thought that group of people really interests me. And that was the seed, as you put it, that got me noodling on a novel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about Dr. McInerny's novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. And again, folks can get it at Chrism Press, chrismpress.com. And yeah, that was one of the questions on my list. Is the Death Symposium a real thing? I had not searched it yet online. So yeah, there you have it. And did you actually, in terms of doing research or fleshing out this idea a little bit more, did you actually inquire further about this? Did you go in and attend one of the meetings?
Yeah, my wife encouraged me to do so. I was doing research on it, and there was actually a chapter of the Death Cafe at my local public library in Northern Virginia. I didn't go in the end. I preferred to let my imagination do the work at that point. But I certainly researched the phenomenon, and as you indicated, for the novel, I changed the name from Death Cafe to Death Symposium. And I certainly imagined the doings of the Death Symposium far beyond what likely happens in the Death Cafe. Again, I wanted to let my own imagination and my own story go to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Daniel McInerny is with us. Again, The Good Death of Kate Montclair is the name of the novel. .com. And then, in terms of the process here, you said that the setting sort of came first. You also, part of the setting that is unique in this story is it's set during COVID or in the aftermath kind of the immediate onset of COVID. Why was that setting important to you?
Yeah, because it's just a powerful image of the presence of death. I think we all have to cast our mind back several years to 2020 and remember how oppressive an atmosphere that really was, with a lot of people very frightened, struggling to make sense of it, struggling with serious health issues and possibly even death. So it just seemed that as the whole world was thinking about death and in the grip of the fear of the threat of death, it seemed just perfect to situate my story within that time frame.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, Dr. Daniel McInerny is with us. Great blessing to be able to interview him today about his novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. You can get it at chrismpress.com. That's chrismpress.com. We're going to delve deeper into this as we go, but I find it quite fascinating to talk about the process and sort of hear the story of what goes on in that process for an author to write a novel like this that is really getting great comments here. One commentator saying that Daniel McInerny brings us a novel of characters flirting with the temptation to be their own author, only to discover the plot of their lives is not up to them. This is a book of and for our dreary moment, but one which reminds us that a good story brings serious pleasure and joyful wisdom to transform even the darkest of ages. We'll be right back.
Introducing iCatholic Mobile, the mobile phone service that keeps you connected while supporting your faith. Every time you make a call, send a text, or browse the web, you're helping the station of the Cross Catholic Media Network continue its mission. A portion of every iCatholic mobile plan goes directly to supporting Catholic programming that spreads the truth, defends the unborn, and strengthens souls. Join the network that aligns with your values. More info at iCatholicMobile.com.
Download the app to take our programming with you wherever you go. Hear what listeners are saying about the regularly updated iCatholic Radio app.
The programs on iCatholic Radio are uplifting, educational, and have served to deepen my faith as a Catholic. Thank you for this amazing station.
Download the free iCatholic Radio app in your Android or Apple store today. If you already have the app, please consider giving us a 5-star review or telling a friend about it.
Please join us in a prayer to our guardian angel. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O holy guardian angel, take care of our soul and body. Enlighten our mind that we may know the Lord better and love him with all our heart. Help us in our prayers so that we may not give in to distractions. Assist us with your advice so that we may see the good and carry it out with generosity. Defend us from the insidious snares of the enemy and sustain us in temptations that we may always be victorious. Remedy our coldness in our worship of the Lord. Cease not to protect us until you have brought us into paradise, where we will praise our good God together for all eternity. Amen.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Dr. Daniel McInerny. We're talking about his novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. You can get it at chrismpress.com. That's chrismpress.com. A great Catholic novel, again, being called an instant classic of 21st century Catholic fiction. So pretty great praise there. I will say I read every word of it, and I don't consider myself to be an astute reader of novels. I would aspire to be. I would hope someday I could be a bit better than I am. But I will say that I think this novel does an excellent job of doing what good novels ought to do, which is really to get the reader reflecting on various ideas about life and to really consider, how different people see things, how different characters, different people in real life, different worldviews and different things that would explain their actions and why they do what they do, and getting down very much to the fundamental of how they view God and how they view the very meaning of their lives. And I think all of that is very rich in this novel, especially as you kind of get propelled along to the final sort of sequence in the novel. And so a lot of really wonderful opportunities here to really have some great reflection with a good, solid Catholic author with a great novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. Again, chrismpress.com. But Dr. McInerny, on this, actually, before we go even any further, why don't you just share in your own words a little summary for folks, just so they can understand the basic aspect of the story here, and just help them to have a sense of what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, the protagonist of the novel is a woman in her mid-50s, Kate Montclair, who in the opening page of the novel receives devastating news that she is gravely ill. She has an inoperable brain tumor. So she is facing her death, and it is no spoiler to tell the audience that she dies in the end. I tell you that in the title. So the book is not about a miracle cure. It is about how this woman faces her death. She was brought up very poorly as a Catholic, has not practiced her faith in her adult life, has not really thought that much about religion, doesn't know what to do with the idea. She has been a school teacher for most of her life, a high school English teacher. And she is flailing around trying to make sense of the diagnosis. She runs into the kind of advertisement that I was talking about in the earlier segment. She sees an advertisement for this thing called the Death Symposium. She's not the kind of woman who usually goes to coffee shops to talk with total strangers about death. But as she looks up the Death Symposium on her phone, she realizes that the moderator of the discussion is an old friend of hers. In fact, a woman that she used to teach with in her younger years and had some adventures with in her younger years. And that is what really attracts her to attend a meeting of the Death Symposium. This woman, her old friend, Adele Schraeder, is an interesting character. When she learns about Kate's diagnosis, she actually tempts Kate with the idea that maybe the best thing to do in her circumstances is to take her own life. Now, Kate, being a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia, would be breaking the law if she took her own life. So it's both morally wrong, it's legally wrong. There's a pretty big risk involved. But Kate begins to contemplate this idea of taking her own life. The story goes on from there, however. I'm not going to spoil it, but that's the setup.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's called The Good Death of Kate Montclair, chrismpress.com. And, I was drawn in only a couple pages into that first chapter when you get the reaction of the protagonist, Kate, here, and her response to getting the news that she has advanced cancer, and the way that the question strikes her mind. I'll just read a portion of it. It says, "Before I even got to the elevator, I had gone through all 5 of Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance. She seems to have forgotten total existential bewilderment. It's not at all the same as anger. It's not, I'm mad because fate is taking my life from me. It's more like how you feel when you watch a foreign film and you don't get the abrupt and enigmatic ending. wait, that's it? It's over? Could someone please tell me what that was supposed to be about? So again, this grappling of meaning. What was this all about, right? What is the meaning of my life is really what she's grappling with. And you put this question in italics when this strikes her. Wait, that's it? It's over? Could someone please tell me what that was supposed to be about? And I thought that was an interesting choice. Anything with regard to your use of italics here and throughout the book, or anything further you'd want to say on it?
Yeah, thank you for reading that passage. I think it really is pivotal in situating the reader in what I take to be the deepest conflict that Kate is experiencing. Certainly, it's a conflict that she has just received a fatal diagnosis, no doubt. But what Kate is really suffering from in these early moments after receiving the diagnosis and throughout the novel is a crisis of meaning. And that's why I put those sentences in italics. My life is going to end now, but all my dreams, have not come true. Her life has been kind of a wreck in many respects. It doesn't add up to anything. And then it just ends. That is what is really tormenting her. And that is what her old friend Adele Schraeder proposes to help her deal with in the final stage of her life. It's worth noting, too, I think it's evident in the passage you read, but the novel is told in Kate's first person point of view. And so sometimes when I put a sentence or even a whole paragraph in italics, I'm really, really emphasizing what is bothering Kate, inside her mind. But the reader is with Kate inside her consciousness for a long time, I'll say. Yes,
very good. And, we do have before chapter 1 a fictional editor's preface here that is written by a character in the story. And then that character doesn't really show up until a pretty good bit into the story. Tell us about that decision and what you were after there.
Yeah. The story is told in two different time frames. We've been talking about kind of the main plot, which occurs in Northern Virginia, in the DC area in 2020, COVID year 2020. But there are also significant flashbacks to Kate's post-college years when she was a young teacher. In fact, she went over to Italy. She was a teacher at an international school in Rome, and that's where she met Adele Schraeder, who was also teaching at her school. And at a local boys' school, she met another young man named Benedict Aquila, and they reconnect in 2020 as well, and he plays a pivotal role in the story of the last stage of Kate's life. And as you say, he ends up kind of presenting to the world the memoir that Kate wrote during her final illness. So the bulk of the novel is Kate in her first person voice telling the story of her final illness from the day of her diagnosis until the very end. She's not there to present that man to the world, but her old friend Benedict Aquila comes forward to edit it and shape it and present it to the world kind of as a book. And that book is The Good Death of Kate Montclair.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the title of the novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair, chrismpress.com. chrismpress.com. When you are constructing the novel, how soon into the process are you just sitting down and sort of typing away, the first draft of the story? How much do you know about the characters? How much do you kind of go through trying to figure out the characters? Do you already have the logic of the plot kind of beaten out? Do you already have the controlling idea? Is that maybe the first thing that you sort of nail down? Anything further you can share about the process?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by your use of that phrase, controlling idea. I'm wondering if you're as big a fan of Robert McKee's book Story as I am, where he uses that phrase, controlling idea. I'm a philosopher. I'm an academic. I can be pretty left-brained and analytic. So I like to plan. I like to have theme or controlling idea. I like to have the act structure of the plot worked out. I like to know who my characters are pretty well. I like to have a fairly good sense of the ending. So, yeah, I'm a planner in the language of writers. I'm not a seedless writer, as many famous writers. I like to have a plan, a map. At the same time, I've learned that you have to let your right brain, the imaginative side of your consciousness, take the lead. If you do need analytical thinking, you do need to kind of work out your plot. In the dance of inventing a novel, you really need to let the more intuitive side of your brain take the lead. And so at a certain point, you have to put those notes away. You have to put the schemes and the outlines and the character backstories and the notes. You just have to set all of that aside and let intuition take the lead. And sometimes that can be quite difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. So we're going to be back with Dr. Daniel McInerny in just a bit. We'll talk a little bit more about process, but also dive more into his novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. Again, you can get it at chrismpress.com, chrismpress.com. And as he mentions that phrase, controlling idea, and talks about Robert McKee and his, he's got great work on it. But really, it was I was refreshed on that by reading Dr. McInerny's book that we talked about last week, Beauty and Imitation, where he has a bit of a treatment on it that is very, very helpful. So again, I want to recommend that book to you as well. You can get it at bookstore.wordonfire.org. May seem like a lot of reading here, but look, if you're into writing, if you're into art, you're going to love it. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
The Catholic Current, bringing Christ to the world and the world to Christ.
God knows what he's about. He knew this was going to happen, and who did he send? He sent the likes of us. I mean, it's kind of astounding. My joke about that is that he sent the likes of us because he wants all the credit, because we certainly couldn't do it on our own.
I would not have chosen me, trust me.
The Catholic Current, 5 p.m. Eastern, from the Station of the Cross and on the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network presents Saints and Seasons. On November 25th, we celebrate the feast of St. Catherine of Alexandria, Virgin and Martyr. Catherine was born of noble pagan parents in Alexandria in the late 3rd century. She was highly intelligent and well-educated, and when she converted to Christianity as a young woman, she devoted herself to studying every aspect of the faith. Upset at the pagan displays of the Emperor Maximian, Catherine boldly confronted the ruler, who was intrigued by her zeal and summoned his best philosophers to debate her. Catherine defeated every pagan argument, which led to many conversions, and the furious emperor ordered her tortured. She remained steadfast, so the emperor tried to win her apostasy with bribes, flattery, and offers of marriage, but Catherine rejected everything, having consecrated her virginity to God. She was tortured again, this time on a barbarous device now known as a St. Catherine wheel, but her faith broke the machine instead, and she was finally beheaded. Catherine was one of the most popular saints in medieval Christendom, with her feast a major holiday. One of the 14 Holy Helpers, she is patroness of maidens, female students, wheelwrights and mechanics, apologists, and more. Her feast was removed from the calendar in the 20th century due to the many fantastic legends attached to her story, but it was happily restored by Pope St. John Paul II. Also honored on this day are St. Moses of Rome, St. Mercury, and many other martyrs, confessors, and holy virgins. For more about the saints and seasons of the Catholic Church, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Dr. Daniel McInerny. We're talking about his book, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. A great novel came out last year. You can get it now by going to chrismpress.com. That's chrismpress.com. And if you're looking for a good fictional work, a good novel to read, highly recommend this one, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. Definitely going to get you thinking about the most important questions. And I want to get back into the content of the novel in just a moment. But first, just one last process question, because, again, this area really intrigues me. Dr. McInerny, the way that you, since you are a philosopher, you are more of a planner in the way that you construct the story, even before you begin writing. Does that mean do you find that you're then able to be a bit more efficient in your writing, in the sense of maybe not as many drafts as you would have to do if you didn't plan as much, and also maybe not having to write as much, not even just in terms of drafts, but I know, for instance, I've heard of Hemingway's process where he would write way more than the story, and then really his work was, cutting it almost like a sculptor, cutting down the marble, cutting the words away until he had it down to what he wanted. What would you say to that with respect to your own process?
Yeah, I wish I could say I was more efficient being the plan I am, but I'm doubtful that it really reduces the number of drafts and the number of words I write. It's more about that my mind works. I just know that if I tried to write way, one sentence, and then write the next sentence, and then let the spells by sentence. If I did, I might have a day feel like I really wrote the next or the day after. I would get because where I was going, and so I would end up right back in my notebook with my planning and my plotting and my analyzing. So I would rather do the planning, or at least a good amount of it up front. But when I get into composition, it again, I wish I could say it gets more efficient, but it really doesn't. You still end up getting stuck. You still end up throwing out those plans and starting over from scratch. It's a messy business making a work of art. It's never clean and should probably never be clean. I use that metaphor of a dance between the left side of our brain and the right side of our brain. It's perhaps better to say that we're learning how to dance in the making of the work of art. Learning how to let the right side of the brain, or that right hemisphere mode of thinking, take the lead in the dance while still allowing the left hemisphere and its planning and its schemes a significant role. It's a back and in a forth. It's a stumbling around. It's throwing out, it's making progress. It's a mess, Jim, is what I'm saying. But hopefully at the end, when all the dust clears, you a story, you've got a work of art.
Yeah, I don't know what the etiquette is on asking an author about how many drafts they wrote, but I feel more comfortable asking you because you are also clearly interested in the construction of the art and the philosophical questions surrounding it. Again, Beauty and Imitation, a philosophical reflection on the arts. Want to recommend that and the interview we did last Monday if you want to learn more about that. But yeah, how many drafts would you say? And also, not not just how many drafts, but how long do you think from when you started this project to when you finished it? How long did it actually take you?
Oh, years, absolute years. But without working on it every day with perfect consistency. At that time, I had demand teaching jobs during most of that time. But it did take years. I think it's impossible to say in our digital age, where a lot of us are writing on a laptop, just how many drafts you do, because every day, in effect, you are making a new draft because you can edit the work from the day before so quickly, so easily. So does that count as a draft? Is it only a draft when you have a complete script and then go at it from start to finish? I don't know. I lost count, but let's just say it was a long process. It was many drafts. And I want to give a shout out to my editor at Chrism Press, the wonderful Karen Yulo. We were shaping the novel even in the editing stage, even when the novel was accepted, even when we had a publication date. We were still, especially the first third or so of the novel, first quarter of the novel, we were working that, and there were major decisions that were made pretty late in the game that I am confident made it a much, much better novel.
Okay. And then, final process question is I've heard some writers, some authors say that they don't like writing. They like having written. How about you? What would you say in terms of, do you like writing?
I love writing. I rewriting as well, but I love first drafts. It gets old for me to begin a story from scratch. So I love every stage of the writing process. I don't want to romanticize it. My philosophical book on art, I think, underscores the fact that I'm not romantic in my thinking about art. I like to go at art as a carpenter goes at making a bookshelf. I look at it in a very forward craftsman-like way. And I just love making things, but that doesn't own that it doesn't mean that it's going, it doesn't progress. In fact, there are many, many days when you feel that I am not making progress at all. I'd say on what I'm working now, I've started a new novel. I don't feel the warm fuzzies right now about that book. I feel stuck. I don't feel the progress. I've been doing this long enough not to panic because I know that's part of the process. But it's still a little frustrating. That's just how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a discipline for sure. But yeah, it seems like as you read it, that it's something that you were enjoying writing as well. You get that sense in many parts. And I want to share this again. We're talking about Dr. Daniel McInerny's book, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. It's a novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. You can get it at chrismpress.com, chrismpress.com. And this is, I think, an example of, I remember when I was in school for screenwriting, there'd be a lot of talk about, the writer finding their voice and various writers who had voice. This is one, I think, example of the unique voice that you bring in your novel here. And this is talking about, it says that, the main character here, Kate Montclair, again, she's gotten this very bleak diagnosis that she's dying of advanced cancer, and that, I think it's her friend here saying, we're going to put together a game plan, to which these are her thoughts now, saying a game plan, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah. like it's halftime of the big game and we're 21 points down. I smiled back at him, appreciative of the sentiment, but I'm in no mood for fantasy. He pressed on. And it goes from there. I guess maybe that was the doctor speaking there, but yeah, you get these various moments, quite lighthearted throughout, and that's part of the character that you've built. But the whole world of these characters, there's that sense of the voice of the author here. Anything further you can share on that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you picked that passage. I think we've made clear, the title of the book makes clear that it's a story about serious things. It's a story about someone facing death. But I think I would have failed if people see the story in large part as funny, because I really tried to make Kate Montclair a very likable person. And for me, that's somebody with a really good sense of humor. And I hope she's not the only character in the book with a sense of humor. I think even Adele Schraeder, who's something of the antagonist and has nefarious plans, is still funny in certain respects. And that to me is something that I'm always trying to capture in my writing, as in imitation of Eva Lavoie, who we were talking about at the beginning, as I try to make my own imaginative critique of our anti-culture. Part of that critique is to see what is funny, sometimes kind of blackly funny or tragically funny, but still funny. That's a big part of what I hear as my voice, and something that I have a lot of fun doing, bringing in to my fiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, talking about The Good Death of Kate Montclair, it's a novel. You can get it over at chrismpress.com, chrismpress.com. Learn some new words in this book. One word you put a highlight on early in the book: perpend, to contemplate, cogitate, chew over, which is a great word. And then this word that continues to pop up throughout, the catastrophist, aware that something terrible happened and that its effects remain very much with us. Now, I think we talked in the last interview, and you said, well, hey, I'm a philosopher. This was about philosophy, not theology. Didn't really, write that into the philosophy book. But there's a whole lot of theology, I would say, in the novel. And so even that sense of the catastrophist, this sense that, look, you don't have to be religious to have this sort of sense that, look, we're all a catastrophist in some sense, that we understand there's something wrong, something terrible that has happened. Right. And that as you write in here a little bit later, like Londoners in 1941, except that in our case, we are all so shell-shocked that we've forgotten there's even a war on. That's from the protagonist as well. Anything further on that?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, in her interior narration, Kate describes herself as a catastrophist. She has this sense that a catastrophist is a human being. She's raised kind of, sort of, as a Catholic, but very badly. So she doesn't practice now, and has never really practiced in her adult life. So she doesn't naturally think in the categories of Catholic theology. She doesn't see death, for example, as an effect of the mystery of original sin. That's just not how her mind works. But yet, she has this abiding sense that some kind of catastrophe has occurred, because all you have to do is watch the news. All you have to do is look at the headlines, and you see disasters left and right whenever you have human beings. And one of those disasters is that we all die. And so in her crisis of meaning, Kate keeps asking herself, was there a catastrophe? I don't have a memory of it. Human beings don't see a memory of it, but that is outside of Christian believers. But there does seem to have been some sort of an event that took us off course and has led us into our partless state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Daniel McInerny is with us talking about his novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. You can get it over at Chrism Press, chrismpress.com, chrismpress.com. As we head into the holiday season, we're in Thanksgiving week here, which I'm sure you're well aware of. Excited to get to Thursday, Thanksgiving this week, but then it's a quick move into Advent and on towards Christmas, and as a great time to be generous and to give back to people. People that are readers that would love this. Go to chrismpress.com. The Good Death of Kate Montclair.
Can we be happy without God? Atheists say yes, we Christians say yes, but only to a certain extent. What's our reason? There are some natural human desires that can be satisfied without living for God. The desire for sensory pleasure, success, and loving relationships. There are certain desires, however, that can't be satisfied without God. For example, we don't just desire some love, we desire infinite love, love without limit. This is manifest when we get frustrated with imperfect manifestations of it. The same is true for knowledge, justice, and beauty. Since God alone is infinite in these perfections, only He can satisfy our desires for them. Therefore, to borrow from St. Augustine, without God, our hearts would be forever restless. And my friends, a restless heart is an unhappy heart. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
It just really connected me to my faith. I always considered myself 100% Catholic, but didn't really realize that I wasn't fully practicing my faith, so I learned so much through the Station on the Cross and began just getting deeper in my prayers and feeling just so much closer to God and so well versed in learning more about the Bible and more about what actually it means to be Catholic. So it became very, very important to me, and I listen to the radio station daily, and I absolutely love it. I make it a regular practice of donating every time they have their fundraising, and just love it and wouldn't want it to ever go away.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Dr. Daniel McInerny with us, talking about his novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. You can get it at chrismpress.com, chrismpress.com. Again, a great gift for somebody looking for a great Catholic novel, something that they probably haven't come across, as it is quite recent, just published last year. And again, being billed here as an instant classic of 21st century Catholic fiction. And how do you like that term, Catholic fiction? Is that something that you accept and say, yeah, give me that label, Catholic fiction? Or would you say, hey, this is just I'm going after a good work of fiction, and there's some Catholic sensibility to it, but yeah, how do you read that?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It's one I grapple with all the time. I think I tend to the second option. I want to be a writer. I want to have the virtues of craftsman that I was talking about in the last segment. I want to make goods and construct them well and move people's hearts and minds. And I'll be as good as anybody else who practices the craft. So in one sense, I just like to think of myself as a writer. But as the great 20th century Catholic writer of fiction, Flannery O'Connor, said in one of her essays, when we tell stories, we're communicating how we see reality. We're communicating our sense of the truth. And as a Catholic believer, I certainly reality is. And I'm not going to hide that. So it's inevitable that when I tell a story, my Catholic imagination is going to be intimately involved with all that plotting and revising and throwing out that we were talking about earlier. So yes, I want to be a writer because and without any qualification, because I don't want anybody to think I'm not trying to play the same game that every other writer is playing. And I want to reach as many readers as I possibly can, Catholic and non-Catholic alike. It just so happens the kind of writer that I am is one that sees the world with Catholic imagination. So I can't escape, and in a sense, I don't want to escape the designation Catholic writer. I'll just always feel a little ambiguous about it, but I'm not scared of it either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. So I guess one last question, and then I want to give you the floor with at least a few minutes to go to share whatever else you'd like to share with us today about it all. But I guess there's a great element, and again, we don't want any spoilers here, but I think we can share this much, that you really bring in a wonderful element as part of the plot, which is the green scapular. Now, many of our listeners who are Catholic would be aware of the green scapular. You probably know something of it in terms of like the conversion scapular, right? Get this to people who you want to experience a conversion. You give a more fleshing out, kind of even a history of the green scapular at a certain point in the novel. But this is a great element that you bring in that helps propel the story, and is a great part of the story. Anything you want to share on it?
Well, I came upon the green scapular, maybe as a lot of people, as a spiritual weapon of conversion. And I would hear stories of people hiding the green scapular in the glove compartments of people's cars or underneath the floor mat or wherever. And for some reason that always stuck in the back of my mind. And so there is a character in the novel in that earlier time period, back in the 1980s, during Kate Montclair's years as a school teacher in Rome. There's a character there who is captivated with the idea of hiding green scapulars, but it meant for mere comic relief. I have a serious and indeed spiritual purpose with it. There's a distinct Marian element in the novel. There is grace working through the lives of these non-believers who are trying to make sense out of their lives and trying to make sense out of death. And one of the very strange ways in which grace works in the novel is through the green scapular being used by someone who doesn't really understand, in fact, who has kind of serious mental health issues. So it's, I want to say that grace is powerful enough, and Our Lady's intercession is powerful enough to work through events and even religious articles that be very powerful in our lives. And that's all I'll say without getting too deep into the story.
Yeah, well, it is a wonderful reminder as well of the powerful sacramental that is the scapular, and the green scapular in particular. We're down to only a few minutes to go. But anything else you want to share with us today, go for it.
Yeah, I would invite listeners to read the novel. I think they'd enjoy it. And also, if they want to find out more about me and my work, I write a Substack newsletter called The Comic Muse, M-U-S-E. You can just search on my name, Daniel McInerny, at Substack, and you'll come upon it. Right now, you don't have to pay to be a subscriber, and you can learn more about me and my work. Some thoughts philosophical, some thoughts as an artist, some thought bridging the two worlds. It's interesting how we kind of live the way of beauty or discover the way of beauty in the midst of what I like to call our anti-culture. The Comic Muse is a good resource for that.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, again, you can go to danielmcinerney.substack.com. The Comic Muse, a review of culture and the arts. Also, want to, again, recommend the novel The Good Death of Kate Montclair, chrismpress.com, and also the book Beauty and Imitation, a philosophical reflection on the arts, bookstore.wordonfire.org. Anything that you would share with anybody else that might be out there that would have a desire? Maybe they're not too much into the discipline of writing, but maybe they've dabbled in it. Any encouragement for folks to simply enjoy developing their skill as a writer?
Yeah, I meet, being a college professor, I meet a fair number of young people who desire to be artists of one kind or another, and including writers. And I see it as sort of a mini apostolate of mine to simply encourage them and to dive in, certainly, but to dive in intelligently. To treat it as I aspire to treat it. And again, that is as a craft. The one thing that's about reading is that there is no real head. That is, if you're going to learn how to play the harp, you got to haul in this instrument that may be bigger than you are. But with writing, there's just pencil and paper, or there's a laptop. And so it can be deceptive and how much work is involved. So I encourage people really study the craft.
Mm-hmm. I also want to encourage folks, if they do get the book, The Good Death of Kate Montclair, at the very back, you do get a treat when you finish. There is a way that you can also receive the free short story that Dr. McInerny has written as well. So you get a little bonus there. So again, The Good Death of Kate Montclair, you can get it at chrismpress.com. That's chrismpress.com. Dr. McInerny, thank you so much for the time, the 2-part series. We've greatly appreciated it. Thank you so much.
Jim, it's been a delight. Thank you so much.
God bless you all.
My name is Nathan Wigfield, Executive Director of the St. Thomas More House of Prayer, a Catholic retreat center in Cranberry, Pennsylvania,